Matt Schlapp, the guy who puts together CPAC for the Republican Party, a major figure in the Republican Party, he has been accused of sexual assault. A male staffer says that Schlapp grabbed his crotch, apparently, while the staffer was driving Schlapp after a night of drinking. Will not surprise you to hear yet another person in the GOP who's pushing homophobic policies, who invited a bigot to come speak at CPAC about how America could have more bigoted laws against gay people, has, of course, hypocritically assaulted someone of the same gender. Why does that matter? It really doesn't, except to highlight the utter hypocrisy present in this party. We hear about projection a lot. We don't hear as much about the other side of that, which is people who have dime store a psychiatrist here, but it's the truth. People who have unresolved feelings, perhaps because they grew up in an environment that is very repressive, pointing to others who appear to have those same feelings and accusing them of poor behavior. This is what a lot of the most vehement conservatives do. And unfortunately, if you have the kind of morals that tell you it's okay to deal with your own homosexual desires by picking on homosexuals, then you also are more likely to have the kind of morals that tell you it's okay to grope somebody without their permission. That is sexual assault. Don't let the specifics fool you. That's just what it is. I was delighted to see that a fellow Michigander who's in this same field here of online news was on top of this story. His name is Jeff Waldorff. I'm a big fan of Waldorff Nation, and I definitely recommend you check it out. He does great commentary, and we've got his video to tell us about this. Let's have a listen.
The Daily Beast's Roger Sullenberger with a bombshell report. Apparently, a former male staffer for Herschel Walker's Senate campaign has accused Republican Matt Schlapp of sexual harassment and groping. So let's get into the details here. Okay. So now, that staffer described Schlapp as giving him a sustained and unwanted and unsolicited sexual contact while he was allegedly driving Schlapp back from an Atlanta bar back in October. So let me say this, right? If this is true, this kind of fits with the history of allegations against Matt Schlapp. Okay, so I wouldn't exactly be surprised if this is the case. And by the way, the staffer seems to have some receipts. So with that, more details.
Very important right there with the receipts. I do not think we would be hearing about this at all without them. It is an unfortunate reality in our country that, particularly when you're dealing with someone who is powerful, such as Mr. Schlapp, the victim is fighting an uphill battle just to be believed. Now, I'll grant that we have to presume innocence, but that fact is taken advantage of entirely too often. That is used as an excuse not to do the hard work of prosecuting a rich person. Let's let Mr. Waldorff continue.
Details. Now, the staffer said that the incident had occurred on the night of October 19th, when Schlapp, chair of the American Conservative Union and the lead organizer for the influential Conservative Political Action Committee, had both allegedly, quote, groped and fondled his crotch in his car against his will after buying him drinks at 2 different bars. The staffer described Schlapp, who had traveled to Georgia for a Walker campaign event, as inappropriately and repeatedly intruding into his personal space at the bars, and then, of course, in the car, going back to the hotel room, escalated quite a bit.
Jeez.
So, maybe it's a little too late to warn you all, but anybody who is, I guess, triggered by sexual assault, content warning. Okay. So, more details. The staffer also said that he was keenly aware of his power dynamic with Schlapp, widely regarded as one of the most influential figures in national conservative politics. So I think that's really important to mention, right? There is a power dynamic. When you have so much influence, when you have so much power, especially, anywhere really in politics, but we're talking about conservative politics here. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of predators, when they have that power, they do feel comfortable enough to do this openly. And they also know that because of that power dynamic, a lot of the victims won't necessarily speak out.
And bear in mind, they also lack the morality. They're in a political party which exists to harm other Americans, either by stealing from them in the form of giving massive tax breaks to people that do not need it for a made-up benefit, which is the theory of trickle-down economics. It's been proved not to work. In fact, the opposite happens. When you give tax breaks to the rich, the poor suffer, because rich people do not have back bills to pay. Rich people, by definition, have an overabundance of money. So they use that money to gain more from themselves. At the best, what they do with their tax breaks is put it in the bank and sit on it. America loses out in that deal. But do not forget that they make scapegoats of people in order to look like they are busy. And unfortunately, that play acting that they have done since the 1800s has become the actual motivation for most of them. Hatred of homosexuals, hatred of minorities of any kind, has become the actual motivator for a lot of these politicians because they grew up listening to the lies. And here we are.
They'll be afraid to do so. And of course, this staffer is absolutely afraid, mainly because of his career in Republican politics. And so now that said, the Daily Beast noted that they were withholding the staffer's name at his request, citing concerns of drawing attention to himself while embarking on his first weeks in a new job in Republican politics. Now,
we're not going to listen to this whole thing. He does longer form videos, but there's one part I want to get to.
He's in Republican politics, whatever. He decided he's not going to come out publicly. Well, okay, sure.
No, it's understandable.
All right. And he cares more about his job. Well, look, I don't care about his politics. I don't care about his job. He's still a victim. That's what's important here. And he did say that he would come forward if Schlapp denied his claims, which, of course, he's going to come out and, well, deny the claims. But we'll get to that. But we continue with the allegations. Schlapp, the staffer recalled, said that he'd wanted to spend the evening discussing the staffer's professional future.
Yeah.
Quote, it was a public space, and I was thinking that he got the hint. I did not want to embarrass him, but it escalated. So now, after the 2 bars, he drove Schlapp back to his hotel. And then, of course, that's when the alleged fondling had happened. And then when they arrived at the hotel, the staffer said that Schlapp had invited him to his hotel room. The staffer declined and left as quickly as he could.
Good Lord.
He then, the next morning, informed the Walker campaign about what had happened.
This is interesting.
So that's actually also part of the receipts because they spoke to the Walker campaign, and there was a staffer that said, yes,
and it means
we were aware of these complaints.
People that can testify to
but we'll get to what they did in response. So now, the receipts. So there are some call logs that this staffer had shared with the Daily Beast. And there were even a couple of videos that were recorded by the staffer detailing in his own words what had happened. And again, those have not been released to the public because right now this staffer is staying anonymous. Okay. So now Schlapp, according to the call logs, had called the staffer after he had returned home. This is slightly after midnight, and spoke to him in a short conversation, after which this staffer then agreed to drive him to another campaign event, even after what had happened. However,
This is the
right
part
after the call, the staffer had broken down and recorded a series of videos detailing that evening, which again he had shared with the publication, as well as two people close to him, including the staffer's wife. In the video, he's alleged to have said, quote, "What is wrong with me? This is okay to happen? I don't know what I did. It's very sad that this is okay."
So that, as Jeff Waldorff is getting into, it's a very common reaction to a sexual assault. Blaming oneself, asking, why, what did I do? And also the initial agreement. This happens in all kinds of dramatic, high-pressure situations. If you're not prepared for something intense like that, you don't think it's going to happen to you. And in the case of a sexual assault, of course you don't think it's going to happen to you, or you wouldn't have been in that place and time. You usually don't react the way you imagine you'd react. The kind of thoughts that go through your head are, what if I'm wrong? What if no one believes me? Will I get in more trouble? Will I get in trouble in some way for this? You usually don't act the way you would consider to be honorable. And it doesn't matter what the situation is. It might not even be a sexual assault. It might be you see somebody beating somebody else at a distance, let's say. And most people freeze up and just try to be ignored. Doesn't mean they're a coward. It means they're in the moment unsure of what to do. And so they default to not drawing attention. And it's devastating to hear that a young man trying to get into politics, admittedly on a very misguided side of the tracks here, but still a young man who didn't ask for this in any way, shape, or form, is now having as a major part of his career the obstacle of how to deal with being forced to work with somebody who sexually assaulted him. And just, we know this generally if we watch this video. If you're watching this video, odds are you're already within a culture that has a better understanding of this. But let's just underline it to be absolutely clear. It's got nothing to do with how you dress. It's got nothing to do with how tough you are. Terry Crews was sexually assaulted, and it was incredibly courageous of him to talk about it. There's bad people out there. Turns out a lot of them work in the GOP.
Now, look, that response, it's a trauma response. What did I do to invite this? What did I do to make this happen? Was I not careful enough? Was I not expressive enough that I wasn't interested? That seems like a normal trauma response to me. Okay? And so more quotes here. from the videos. Matt Schlapp with the CPAC grabbed my junk and pummeled it at length. I'm not sure I would use that description, but ouch. And I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell is going on? That this person is literally doing this to me. From the bar to the Hilton Garden Inn, he has his hands on me, and I feel so effing dirty. I feel so effing dirty. I'm supposed to pick this MFer up in the morning and just pretend like nothing happened? This is what I'm dealing with. This is what I gotta do. Now again, you listen to that trauma response. And I think that response adds a lot of credibility to the story.
It's hard to hear, man. There's 12 more minutes in that video. I think it's worth watching in its entirety. Just Jeff Waldorff's take on it. He does a great job of breaking this all down. But to sum it up, the Walker campaign staff asked that staffer. First of all, they were very supportive, and it has to be said. I think I can't make assumptions about what their motivations were, but I think in a misguided move, they did this next thing. They asked him to contact Schlapp about what happened. So essentially to confront the man in writing via text and tell him he would not be driving him. Schlapp then wrote back to the staffer several times, asked him to call him, and then went about his career. You should not ever ask somebody who has been assaulted to go confront the person who did it in any way. I would think logic would just tell you that. The people to contact would be the police. I don't know what conversations they had, but the fact that the police were not immediately contacted is disappointing. Walker campaign staff gets a lot of support for being supportive, and yet the police, to my knowledge, were not notified about this. That's unfortunate. But as I say, I don't know the details, bearing in mind this guy also is trying to build his career in GOP politics. And when we're talking about the people who will react in the worst possible way to accusations of sexual assault, siding with the assaulter, and in particular, if that person is powerful, that's the GOP through and through. Lindy Lee tweets, Matt Schlapp grabbed the crotch of a male staffer on Herschel Walker's campaign. Kevin McCarthy had an affair, allegedly for that first thing, by the way, and allegedly to everything I said before this. It has not been proved in a court of law, as it has not been given a chance to be. Kevin McCarthy had an affair with a fellow member. Matt Gaetz trafficked teen girls. That I will not say allegedly to, because I am daring that punk to sue me. I would love to have discovery in court. If you can somehow make him aware of this, Matt Gaetz, you engaged in child sex trafficking. Jim Jordan covered up sex crimes. Trump assaulted at least 27 women. These are the sexual deviants leading the GOP. True. Lindy Lee, true. That's who they are. That's the GOP. Want to be clear that the reason they are deviants here is one simple thing. No consent. I take that back. Kevin McCarthy's affair with a fellow member barely belongs up there. It is only that they did not, presumably, have the consent of their spouses. That makes that abhorrent in terms of their morality. But the rest, come on. There's basically one golden rule. Every party involved must consent. No child is capable of giving consent. Therefore, you have these deviants. That is the GOP, folks. Be aware of it. They are not going to change until they are made to change. There's not going to be a moment where they look around and think, "My God, I'm sick of hanging out with criminals, scumbags. I'm sick of sharing company with devils." They're just not. They prefer that company so they can blend in. It has become a party for the absolute worst humans in America. They all but put out a flag advertising it when CPAC, run by Schlapp, hung up a giant banner in lights, literally saying, just going by, literally saying, "We are all domestic terrorists." Does that sound like I'm making that up? Yes, but I'm not making that up. They said that. We are all domestic terrorists. This is who they are. Do not forget.